What if the people you trust most in your life, your friends, your family, even your fiancée, are only there because of what you have, not because of who you are? It's a dark thought, isn't it? But for one man, it became an obsession. We're often told to trust those closest to us, but this is the story of a man who did the exact opposite. He believed the only way to find the truth was to engineer a lie so massive, so catastrophic, that it would burn away everything fake and leave only what was real. This isn't a story about a man losing it all. It's about a billionaire who threw it all away on purpose, just to see who would stay to help him pick up the pieces. Welcome to a journey where a billionaire's fake ruin reveals some very real feels. A social experiment so extreme that it will make you question everything you think you know about loyalty and love. We're about to show you how a bankruptcy test leaves only his assistant standing, and believe me, the result is a plot twist that will hit you right in the heart. On one side, you have Mark Gomez, a ruthless, cynical billionaire living in a golden cage, suspicious that every single person in his life is wearing a mask. On the other, there's Reagan, his humble, diligent, and almost invisible assistant, who manages the life of a man who barely even sees her. Their worlds are universes apart, but they are about to collide in the most dramatic way imaginable when Mark decides to press the self-destruct button on his entire empire. He fakes his own financial collapse, a secret test designed to expose the greed he suspects is all around him. He wants to see who will run and who will remain when the money, the power, and the prestige are all gone. What unfolds is an emotional, heart-aching story of overcoming betrayal, of unexpected kindness, and the discovery that true love often comes from the one place you never thought to look. It's a story that proves the greatest treasures aren't kept in a vault. This journey is about to begin, but before we dive in, we want to know how far our story is traveling today. Please take a second to drop a comment below and let us know what beautiful city you're watching from right now so we can imagine the view with you. And if you believe that true loyalty is priceless, do us a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this. And please share this video with someone you know who will be touched by it. Alright, let's get into it. Have you ever wondered what would happen if, overnight, everything you'd ever built just vanished? For most folks, it's a distant fear, but for the ruthless billionaire Mark Gomez, it became a toolless social scalpel, if you will. He decided to orchestrate his own downfall, a spectacular fake bankruptcy, not from desperation, but from a burning need to see the truth. This was to be his ultimate secret test, a way to sift through the souls around him and find out what or who was actually real. After all, when you're at the very top, the air is thin, and trust is a currency far more precious than any stock. Mark felt it in his bones. The weight of his billionaire status was a cloak that distorted everyone's perception. Were they friends with him or with his fortune? Was the love he received genuine or just a well-rehearsed performance? The only way to know for sure was to burn the stage down and see who'd remain in the Asheza hell of a gamble, emotionally speaking. He planned every single detail of his fall with the same cold precision he used to close billion-dollar deals. News leaked, markets reacted, and suddenly the Gomez name was tied not to wealth, but to ruin. The word bankruptcy echoed through the marble halls of his empire, a poison had carefully administered himself. To the outside world, the empire of Mark Gomez had, for all intents and purposes, turned to dust overnight, a truly shocking development. And then, just as had predicted, the exodus began swift and brutal. Partners, buddies, lovers. The stampede was an almost choreographed performance of self-preservation. Yet, in the middle of this hurricane of betrayal, one figure remained completely still: his quiet assistant, Reagan. The woman who organized his calendar and filtered his calls seemed immune to the panic. Her loyalty, once taken for granted, was now shining like a lighthouse in his self-inflicted storm. She didn't show up with a resignation letter, nor with eyes full of pity. Instead, Kelly Reagan just walked into his office, now stripped of its powerful aura, and asked, "Mr. Gomez, what's our first step to rebuild?" It was such a simple question, wasn't it? But it carried the weight of an unshakable loyalty that felt almost alien. There, at the epicenter of his fabricated ruin, the billionaire started to grasp the concept of true human connection, something he hadn't felt in years. In that heart-aching moment, Mark realized his secret test was working in ways more profound and painful than he could have ever imagined. The collapse of his financial world had exposed the moral bankruptcy of nearly everyone he knew. All that was left was his assistant, a silent guardian of an integrity that money couldn't buy or destroy. The real question now was, why? What on earth made her stay when everyone else was running for the hills? You see, for years, Mark Gomez had lived in a gilded cage of his own making, a world of almost unimaginable wealth. It was an isolated existence, where suspicion was his closest companion. He operated on the deeply ingrained belief that every smile, every handshake, every "I love you" was a transaction in disguise. He was a billionaire, sure, but he was also a prisoner of his own paranoia, constantly questioning the motives of those who got close. This secret test was his desperate attempt to find an honest reflection. His fiancée, a glamorous socialite named Isabella, was the epitome of this world, beautiful, charming, and perfectly suited for the arm of a billionaire. But even with her, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that she was in love with the lifestyle, not the man. He'd see her eyes light up at the flash of a camera or the unveiling of a new jewel, and a cold part of him would whisper, "She's playing a role." He barely noticed the quiet competence of his assistant, Kelly Reagan, who moved through his world like a ghost. Kelly was just there, a constant, reliable presence in the background of his high-stakes life. She was the one who remembered his father's birthday, the one who knew he preferred his coffee black on stressful days, the one who handled every crisis with a calm that bordered on supernatural. Yet in his mind, she was just part of the machinery of his life, another flawlessly performing cog. He never truly saw her, not beyond her title of assistant. He was so consumed by the grand drama of his wealth, betrayals he anticipated, the loyalty he craved but never trusted, that he missed the small, consistent signs of genuine character right under his nose. Kelly Reagan wasn't just competent, she was the silent architect of his day-to-day sanity, navigating his volatile moods and impossible demands without a single complaint. Her loyalty wasn't loud or flashy, it was a quiet, steady hum in the chaos of his life. While Isabella dazzled at galas, Kelly was often the one working late, ensuring Mark's empire ran smoothly so he could attend them. He saw the glitter but was blind to the grind. This monumental blind spot was the central irony of his existence. He was so busy looking for a plot twist among the powerful and the beautiful that he failed to recognize the most authentic person in his life was the one handing him his coat each morning. And so, he put his plan into motion, convinced it would expose Isabella and his so-called friends, confirming his darkest suspicions about humanity. The idea that his humble assistant would be the one to upend his entire worldview wasn't even a remote possibility. He saw his world in black and white, the greedy and the honest, but he had no idea he was about to discover a spectrum of human decency he never knew existed. While Mark was lost in his world of cynical calculations, Kelly Reagan operated from a completely different playbook, one of genuine, old-fashioned integrity. Her job wasn't just a job, it was a responsibility she took to heart. She managed the billionaire's chaotic life, not with the detached efficiency of a machine, but with a deeply human touch. She saw the man behind the fearsome reputation, a glimpse of someone who was perhaps more lost than he was ruthless. It was a heart-aching perspective that no one else seemed to have. She often found herself in the awkward position of being his moral buffer. When Mark would dismiss a junior employee with a wave of his hand, Kelly would later find a way to offer a word of encouragement. She'd show a small kindness to the service staff he didn't even notice. It wasn't about undermining him, it was about preserving a baseline of decency within his orbit. She was, in many ways, the unofficial guardian of his reputation, cleaning up the emotional messes he left in his wake. There was a quiet strength in her, an unwavering moral compass that guided her every action. She saw the relentless pressure he was under, the constant demand to be infallible, to be more than human. And while others either feared him or wanted something from him, Kelly simply cared. She believed that kindness wasn't a weakness, but a fundamental strength, a principle she applied whether she was dealing with a fellow billionaire or the delivery guy. This was a philosophy completely alien to Mark's world. She never sought recognition for these acts. They were as natural to her as breathing. She'd defend his often indefensible actions to outsiders, not by making excuses, but by gently suggesting there was more to the story. "He's under a lot of stress," she'd say, a simple phrase that carried a world of empathy. This quiet loyalty was her signature, a stark contrast to the loud, performative loyalty Mark was used to seeing from his inner circle. This wasn't about a secret love story, not yet anyway. It was about professional respect and a profound sense of duty. Kelly Reagan believed that her role as his assistant meant supporting the entire operation, and that included its soul. She saw the cracks in his armor, the moments of vulnerability he tried so hard to hide, and she responded not with judgment, but with an unspoken promise to hold things together, to be the calm in his storm. So as Mark prepared to spring his trap, he was entirely oblivious to the fact that the one person who truly understood his character was already by his side. He thought he needed a dramatic secret test to find a person of substance, but the evidence of true loyalty and kindness was in every perfectly scheduled meeting, every thoughtfully prepared brief, and every quiet act of grace performed by the woman he saw but never truly recognized. The day finally came. Mark gathered his closest circle, a room full of people who had built their lives and fortunes on his success. With a face carved from stone, he dropped the bomb. "It's over. We're facing total bankruptcy." The silence that followed was heavy, thick with shock and disbelief. But it didn't last long. The first crack in the facade came from the person who had vowed to stand by him through thick and thin, his fiancée, Isabella. Her perfectly composed face crumbled, not into sadness, but into pure, unadulterated panic. She didn't even wait for the meeting to end. In a whirlwind of theatrical despair, she stood up, her diamond engagement ring seeming to catch the light one last accusatory time. "I can't do this, Mark," she declared, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I will not go down with a sinking ship." There was no we, no us, just a frantic, desperate It was a brutal public severing of ties, a performance of self-interest so raw it was almost impressive in its honesty. Within hours, the news was everywhere. Isabella, ever the master of her own narrative, had already given a statement to the press. She painted herself as the victim, the heartbroken woman who had been deceived by a reckless billionaire. She spoke of her own future, her brand, and how she needed to protect herself from the toxic fallout of his failure. The word love was conspicuously absent from her carefully crafted speech. It was the ultimate act of being humiliated on a public stage for Mark. Mark watched it all unfold from a secure location, his face a mask of grim satisfaction. It was exactly as Head suspected, yet the reality of it was still a cold slap in the face. The woman Head considered making his wife had just publicly disowned him, reducing their entire relationship to a business merger that had gone sour. Speed of her departure was breathtaking. There was no hesitation, no emotional debate, just a clean, ruthless cut. It was a plot twist even he didn't expect to be so swift. Her betrayal was the first domino to fall, and it set the tone for everything that was to come. She made it socially acceptable to abandon Mark Gomez, By framing him as a penniless loser, she gave everyone else permission to do the same. Her declaration wasn't just a breakup, it was a signal to their entire social circle that the king had fallen and his kingdom was now a wasteland to be fled from, not a home to be defended. The sinking ship analogy was perfect in a twisted way. It revealed that, for her, their relationship was never a partnership, but a luxury cruise. The moment the waters got choppy, she was the first one to leap into a lifeboat, leaving him to drown in the mess of his supposed bankruptcy. And as he watched her sail away without a second glance, Mark knew the most painful parts of his secret test were only just beginning. If Isabella's exit was a dramatic public spectacle, what came next was a quiet, chilling void. The men Mark had called his brothers, his most trusted business partners and friends had known since college, simply vanished. It started with his phone. The device that once buzzed incessantly with calls and texts from his inner circle fell eerily silent. His calls to them, one by one, went straight to voicemail. His texts were left unread, cold blue ticks marking the end of decades-long friendships. These were the men had closed deals with, celebrated victories with, and trusted with his deepest business secrets. They had built empires alongside him, their fortunes inextricably linked to his. Yet, the moment the word bankruptcy attached itself to his name, they treated him like he was radioactive. They ghosted him with a brutal efficiency that spoke volumes. It was a coordinated, silent shunning, a collective decision to cut him loose before his toxic failure could splash onto them. One of his oldest friends, a man whose kids called him Uncle Mark, was quoted in a financial blog distancing his firm from Gomez's unfortunate situation. He didn't even have the decency to say it to his face. It was a stark, painful lesson in their world. Loyalty was a bull market luxury. When the bears came out, every man was for himself. The silence from these men was, in many ways, louder and more humiliating than Isabella's public denouncement. He felt the isolation acutely. The loneliness had always suspected was lurking beneath the surface of his life was now a crushing reality. Every unanswered call was another nail in the coffin of a relationship he once thought was real. He had orchestrated this secret test to find the truth, and the truth was proving to be a bitter pill to swallow. His entire world, it seemed, was built on a foundation of sand, and the tide had just gone out, taking everything with it. It wasn't just about the money. It was the complete and total erasure of his existence from their lives. They scrubbed him from their social media, conveniently forgot to invite him to their weekly poker game, and instructed their own assistants to block his calls. He wasn't just a failed billionaire to them, he was a contagion, a reminder of the causing fragility of their own success. They didn't just walk away, they ran as if their own lives depended on it. This wave of abandonment was a crucial part of his experiment, the part designed to break him down to his very foundation. As he sat alone in a sparsely furnished apartment had set up for this phase, the silence pressing in on him, he couldn't help but wonder if there was anyone left. He had willingly stepped off his throne, and now he was utterly alone in the wilderness. Or so he thought. Just as the silence of his former life was becoming deafening, there was a soft knock on the door of his temporary, modest apartment. It was Kelly Reagan. Mark braced himself for the inevitable. She was here to quit, of course. She would offer a polite, professional resignation, perhaps with a touch of pity, and then she too would be gone. She was, after all, a highly competent assistant who could find work anywhere. Why would she chain herself to the anchor of his apparent bankruptcy? But when she walked in, she wasn't holding a letter of resignation. She was holding a simple, slightly worn envelope. Her expression wasn't one of pity, but of quiet determination. "Mr. Gomez," she began, her voice steady, "I've been doing some thinking, and I want to help." Before he could respond, she placed the envelope on the cheap coffee table between them. "It's not much," she said, almost apologetically, "but it's everything I have, my life savings." Mark just stared at her, then at the envelope, utterly speechless. This was a surprise, a plot twist so profound it felt like it belonged in a different reality. Everyone else had run from his financial ruin, and here was his humble assistant, the one person with every reason to leave, offering him her entire future. It was an act of loyalty so pure and so unexpected that it completely short-circuited his cynical worldview. It was a truly emotional and heart-aching gesture. "I know it won't fix everything," Kelly continued, misinterpreting his silence as doubt. "But it could be a start, to help you get back on your feet. You've been a good boss to me, and I believe in you." She said it with such simple, unvarnished sincerity that it pierced right through the armor he had spent a lifetime building. "I believe in you." When was the last time someone had said that to him and had actually felt it was true? He honestly couldn't remember. For the first time in his meticulously planned secret test, Mark Gomez was completely thrown off script. He had anticipated greed, betrayal, and abandonment, and he had gotten all of it in spades. What he had never, ever factored into his calculations was this: a moment of selfless, breathtaking kindness. It was an act of true love, not romantic. A profound human love built on respect and faith. He was being offered a lifeline from the most unlikely of saviors. He looked at Kelly Reagan, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. He saw not just an efficient assistant, but a woman of extraordinary character and strength. Her offer wasn't just about money, it was a testament to her belief in redemption and overcoming adversity. She wasn't just standing by his side, she was actively trying to rebuild his world with the contents of her own. And in that moment, the powerful billionaire felt more humbled than he ever had in his life. Stunned and deeply moved, Mark knew he couldn't accept her entire life savings. To do so would be to take advantage of a kindness he hadn't earned. Yet, he also couldn't refuse her offer entirely. Rejecting it would be like rejecting her, rejecting the one pure thing he had found in the wreckage of his life. More than that, this was a critical, unforeseen juncture in his secret test. Her incredible loyalty was a variable he needed to understand. Just how far would it go? So with a voice thick with an emotion he rarely allowed himself to show, he made a decision. "Kelly," he said, his voice softer than Shed ever heard it, "I can't take all of this. It wouldn't be right. But I will accept a small portion as a loan. A seed to plant something new." He opened the envelope and carefully took out a few bills, a symbolic amount. It was a gesture to honor her faith in him without destroying her future. This act felt more significant than any multi-billion-dollar deal had ever signed. He looked her in the eye, trying to convey a gratitude that words couldn't possibly capture. "I promise you," he said, "this will be the best investment you've ever made. I will not let you down." He was no longer just acting. In that moment, he was making a genuine vow, not just to her, but to himself. He was committed to seeing this through, to understanding the depths of a character so starkly different from everyone else he knew. Her loyalty was a puzzle he was determined to solve. Kelly simply nodded, a small relieved smile gracing her lips. For her, it wasn't about the money being returned, it was about him accepting her help, accepting her as a partner in his struggle for overcoming this crisis. She saw his acceptance not as a transaction, but as a bond of trust being forged between them. She had no idea she was a pawn in a billionaire's grand game. She just saw a man who was down on his luck and believed, with all her heart, that he deserved a second chance. This small exchange shifted the entire dynamic of Mark's experiment. It was no longer a passive observation of betrayal. It had become an active, emotional engagement. He was now tied to Kelly Reagan by a debt, not of money, but of profound gratitude and burgeoning admiration. The test was no longer just about exposing the worst in people. It had morphed into an exploration of the very best. A heart-aching journey he was now on with his unassuming assistant. As she left his apartment that day, Mark was left with a whirlwind of new feelings. The bitterness of betrayal was still there, but it was now mingled with a sense of wonder and a flicker of hope. He had found one person, just one, whose loyalty wasn't for sale. And now he had to play his part, the fallen billionaire, and let her lead the way. He was genuinely curious to see what she would do next, to see how her incredible kindness would navigate the harsh reality of his supposed failure. While Mark's aunt's powerful circle continued to shun him, treating him like a ghost in the city he used to own, Kelly Reagan kicked into high gear. She wasn't one for wallowing in despair. Instead, she attacked the problem of his bankruptcy with the same tireless intelligence and resourcefulness she had always applied to his business affairs. Her first mission: find him a place to live that wasn't the depressing, temporary safe house had chosen for his secret test. She knew he needed a semblance of a real home. She scoured listings, negotiated with landlords who were wary of an unemployed man with no credit, and used her innate charm and persuasiveness to secure him a modest but clean apartment in a decent neighborhood. It was a world away from his penthouse, but it was safe, and it was a start. She even used some of the loan money he had accepted to buy him some basic furniture and stock the fridge. She was, quite literally, rebuilding his life from the ground up, piece by painful piece. But she didn't stop there. Kelly knew that a home wasn't enough. He needed purpose. With a quiet dignity that belied her fierce determination, she began updating his resume. She reframed his failure as a period of strategic transition and highlighted his core skills, stripping away the billionaire bravado to reveal the sharp, strategic mind beneath. Then, she started networking, calling in favors from the few mid-level contacts who respected her enough to listen. She was securing him job interviews. Watching her work was a revelation for Mark. He was used to armies of consultants and executives executing his will. Now he was seeing one woman, his humble assistant, single-handedly maneuvering through the fallout of his catastrophe with more grace and strategic acumen than his entire board of directors combined. She worked tirelessly, never once complaining about the monumental task she had taken on. Her loyalty wasn't just a feeling, it was relentless, determined action. It was a deeply humbling experience. The great Mark Gomez, the titan of industry, was now being prepped for interviews for mid-level management positions by his assistant. She'd coach him, reminding him to be less arrogant, to listen more, to show humility. "They won't care that you used to be a billionaire," she'd say gently. "They'll care if you can do the job and be part of a team." Each piece of advice was a small crack in the armor of his old self. And through it all, she never made him feel small or humiliated. Her support was empowering, her belief in his ability to stage a comeback unwavering. She was not just his assistant anymore, she had become his strategist, his cheerleader, and his sole link to a world that had completely turned its back on him. As he prepared for his first real job interview in over 2 decades, he began to realize that he was in the presence of a truly remarkable woman, someone whose worth couldn't be measured in dollars and cents. The universe, it seems, has a twisted sense of humor. Just as Mark was starting to adapt to his new, simpler reality, Kelly insisted they attend a small charity event. She'd gotten the tickets for free and argued it would be good for him to be around people, even if he had to keep a low profile. Reluctantly, he agreed, staying in the shadows while Kelly mingled politely. It was there, across the crowded room, that his ex-fiancée, Isabella, spotted her. A cruel, predatory smile spread across Isabella's face as she began to move toward her target. Ignoring Mark completely, Isabella zeroed in on Kelly, her voice dripping with condescending pity, but loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Well, look what we have here. Still playing maid to the fallen king?" She sneered, her eyes raking over Kelly's simple but elegant dress. "I have to admire your dedication, dear. Or maybe it's just stupidity, standing by a penniless loser. How does it feel to be the laughingstock of the city?" The words were like venom-tipped arrows, designed to inflict maximum damage. A small circle of onlookers gathered, their faces a mixture of morbid curiosity and second-hand embarrassment. Isabella was reveling in the moment, using Kelly as a prop to publicly reinforce her decision to abandon Mark. To be so publicly humiliated was a cruel fate for someone who had shown nothing but kindness. For Kelly, this was a direct attack not just on her, but on the man she was trying so hard to help. Kelly's face flushed, a wave of heat rising to her cheeks. It was one thing to be abandoned by the powerful, but it was another thing entirely to be verbally assaulted by a woman whose cruelty was as polished as her diamonds. She could feel the stares of the crowd, the whispers, and the snickers. Isabella was trying to make her feel small, insignificant, and foolish for her loyalty. She was trying to break her spirit in the most public way imaginable. Mark, hidden behind a large potted plant near the back of the room, watched the entire exchange, his blood running cold. He was frozen, a torrent of fury and shame washing over him. This was a consequence of his secret test. He had never anticipated that the cruelty meant for him would be redirected onto the one person who didn't deserve it. He saw the pain flash in Kelly's eyes and felt an overwhelming, primal urge to step in and tear Isabella apart with his words. But before he could move, he saw Kelly take a deep, steadying breath. He saw her spine straighten, her chin lift. She wasn't cowering, and she wasn't running. In that moment, he saw a strength in her he had never witnessed before, a quiet dignity preparing to go to battle. He held his breath, realizing that this confrontation was not about him anymore. It was about Kelly Reagan, and the world was about to see what she was truly made of. With a calm that was absolutely breathtaking, Kelly Reagan looked Isabella directly in the eye. The noisy chatter around them seemed to fade into a dull hum as she prepared to speak. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her words, when they came, were quiet, clear, and carried the weight of an unshakable conviction. "You're mistaken, Isabella," she said, her tone even. "His true worth was never in his bank account. It's a shame you were too blinded by the glare of his gold to ever see the man himself." Wow. The comeback was so simple yet so devastatingly effective. It wasn't an insult, it was a statement of fact, a quiet judgment that painted Isabella as the one who was shallow and foolish. The small crowd of onlookers fell completely silent, their smirks replaced by expressions of shock and, in some cases, admiration. Kelly wasn't just defending a penniless loser, she was defending the honor of a man she believed in. And in doing so, she was radiating a power that had nothing to do with money or status. Isabella was momentarily stunned, her cruel smirk faltering. She had expected tears or a flustered retreat. She had not expected this quiet, dignified defiance. "How dare you?" she stammered, trying to regain control, but the momentum was lost. Kelly simply held her gaze, refusing to be intimidated. In not standing by a loser, Kelly continued softly, "In standing by a good man who is going through a difficult time. That's called loyalty. You might want to look it up sometime." And with that, Kelly gave a small, polite nod, turned, and walked away, leaving Isabella standing there, speechless and, for the first time, looking utterly foolish. The crowd began to disperse, whispering amongst themselves. Kelly had not only weathered the storm, she had commanded it. She had taken a moment of intended humiliation and transformed it into a powerful testament to her own character. It was a heartaching display of courage, a quiet victory that was more impactful than any loud argument could ever be. From his hiding spot, Mark had overheard everything. He felt a surge of pride so intense it almost brought him to his knees. He had just witnessed an act of courage and loyalty that went beyond anything his secret test was designed to measure. Kelly hadn't just defended him, she had articulated a truth. He was only just beginning to understand himself, that his worth as a person had become completely entangled with his net worth, and he had let it happen. He slipped out of the event unnoticed, his mind reeling. The image of Kelly standing up to Isabella, so calm and so strong, was burned into his memory. He had set out to test the world and had instead been given a masterclass in integrity by his own assistant. As he walked through the cool night air, he realized with a jolt that the humiliation he'd felt moments ago had been replaced by something else entirely, a profound, heart-stopping admiration for Kelly Reagan. Being forced into a simpler life was for Mark like learning to breathe a new kind of air. Without the constant hum of business deals and the suffocating weight of his fortune, the world started to look different, sharper, more real, and his guide in this new world was Kelly. She was the one who showed him the simple joy of cooking a meal at home, instead of dining at a five-star restaurant. Their shared, home-cooked meals in his tiny apartment became a ritual, a space of genuine human connection he never knew he was missing. He started to see the world through her compassionate eyes. He noticed the way she smiled at the elderly man who ran the corner store, the patience she had with the frustrated barista during the morning rush, the genuine kindness she showed to everyone, regardless of their station in life. These were the small, everyday interactions he had been completely blind to in his previous life as a billionaire. He had moved through the world, but he had never truly been in it. This wasn't a love story built on grand gestures, but on the quiet accumulation of shared moments. It was in the easy laughter they shared over a burnt dinner, the comfortable silence as they read side by side on a rainy afternoon, the way she would instinctively hand him a coffee, made just the way he liked it, without even asking. He was discovering a rhythm to life that wasn't dictated by market fluctuations or shareholder meetings. It was a rhythm dictated by human connection. The process of overcoming his failure was becoming less about regaining his fortune and more about discovering himself. He found that he enjoyed the challenge of fixing a leaky faucet, the simple satisfaction of grocery shopping on a budget, the feeling of being just another person in the crowd. Kelly never treated him like a broken man. She treated him like an equal, a partner in their new humble life. And in her eyes he began to see a version of himself he actually liked. He learned more about her, too. He learned about her dreams of opening a small bookstore one day, her love for old black and white movies, her unwavering optimism in the face of adversity. He saw her not as his assistant, but as a whole person, full of depth, intelligence, and a quiet strength that could rival any CEO had ever known. This emotional journey was far more rewarding than any business victory he had ever achieved. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the walls around his heart began to crumble. The cynical, suspicious billionaire was being replaced by a man who was learning to trust, to feel, to connect. This simpler life, which he had designed as a punishment and a test, was inadvertently becoming his redemption. He was finding a genuine happiness in the one place he never would have thought to look, in the quiet, ordinary moments spent with an extraordinary woman. Living and working so closely with Kelly, Mark began to discover her hidden brilliance, and it was a surprise that left him floored. Had always known she was competent, of course an excellent assistant, but he was now seeing that her intelligence went far beyond logistics and scheduling. One evening, as they were looking over the finances of a small company where he had an interview, she pointed out a flaw in their business model with a sharpness that was staggering. It was an insight his most expensive consultants would have charged him six figures for. She possessed a razor-sharp business acumen, an intuitive understanding of markets and operations that was both natural and deeply insightful. She could read a balance sheet and see not just numbers, but a story of company's strengths, its weaknesses, its hidden potential. He started showing her more complex business problems, hypotheticals from his old life, and she would dissect them with a clarity and wisdom that surpassed many of the executives who used to sit at his boardroom table. But her genius wasn't just analytical. Her true superpower was an incredible intuitive understanding of people. She had an emotional intelligence that was off the charts. She could read a person's motivations, fears, and desires from a simple conversation, a skill that had made her an exceptional assistant, but would make her a legendary leader. She understood that business wasn't just about profits, it was about people, relationships, and trust, very things he had failed to truly grasp. He realized with a jolt that all those times she had gently advised him against a certain hire, or suggested a different approach with a difficult client advice he had often ignored, she had been seeing the whole chessboard, while he was only looking at the king. Her quiet competence wasn't quiet at all, it was a silent masterclass in strategy and human dynamics that he had been too arrogant to notice. The surprise of this discovery was a truly emotional one. He felt like an idiot. He had paid millions for expert advice, while the most brilliant mind had ever encountered was sitting just outside his office door, managing his calendar. He had a secret weapon in his arsenal all along and had never even known it. This plot twist was not about his bankruptcy, it was about his own profound blindness. He had judged everyone by their title and their net worth, completely missing the treasure that was right in front of him. The dynamic between them shifted once more. He began to seek out her opinion not just on his job search, but on everything. He started to see her not just as his savior, but as his peer, his equal. In some ways, she was his superior, especially in the areas of empathy and insight. The fallen billionaire was now the humble student, and his former assistant was the teacher he never knew he needed. One rainy evening, the weight of his charade and the genuine losses had experienced at his friendships, his fiancée, his identity crashed down on Mark all at once. It was a moment of true vulnerability, a crack in the facade he had so carefully maintained. He turned to Kelly, his voice barely a whisper, and confessed a feeling that was surprisingly real. "I feel like a complete failure," he said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "Everything I built, everything I was. It's all gone. Maybe Isabella was right about me." He expected a comforting platitude, a gentle "it'll be okay." But that's not what he got. Instead, Kelly's expression hardened with a fierce protective fire. She put down the book she was reading and turned to face him fully, her eyes locking onto his. "Don't you ever say that," she said, her voice filled with an intensity that startled him. "You didn't fail. The system you were a part of failed you. The people you trusted failed you. But you, Mark Gomez, you have not failed." Her reassurance was not soft and gentle, it was a powerful, unwavering declaration of faith. "The money is gone," she continued, her voice ringing with conviction. "The so-called friends are gone. But your mind, your drive, your ability to see 10 steps ahead of everyone else that's still here. That was never in your bank account. That is you. And that is what we are going to build on." It was a heart-aching speech that felt like a defibrillator to his soul. She showed such fierce, unwavering faith in his character, not his cash. She saw his potential for redemption when he only saw his own ruin. In that moment, she wasn't just his supporter, she was his champion. She believed in the man he could be, even when he was lost in the ghost of the man he used to be. Her loyalty wasn't just passive support, it was an active, fierce belief in his capacity for overcoming this and becoming better. This was the turning point. All his life, people's belief in him had been tied to his success. The moment that success disappeared, so did their belief. But Kelly was different. Her faith in him was unconditional. She wasn't propping up a fallen billionaire. She was reinforcing the spirit of a man she genuinely admired. Her fierce words cut through his self-pity and ignited a spark of his old fire, but this time, it felt different. It was cleaner, purer. He looked at her, truly in awe. The kindness she had shown him was one thing, but this fierce, protective belief in him was something else entirely. It was the ultimate antidote to the humiliation he had endured. In his darkest moment of self-doubt, she didn't just offer him a candle, she handed him a torch and dared him to set the world on fire again. but this time on his own terms. And he knew, without a doubt, that he could do it as long as she was by his side. It was in the aftermath of that conversation that the final wall around Mark's heart didn't just crumble, it was obliterated. As he looked at Kelly, who had now returned to her reading as if she hadn't just single-handedly resurrected his spirit, he was struck by a realization that was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. He was in love with her. It wasn't a calculated affection or a convenient attachment. It was a deep, profound, and undeniable true love. He had fallen for her authenticity in a world that was pathologically fake. He had fallen for her kindness in a life that had been defined by ruthlessness. She was the realest thing he had ever encountered. Her every action was rooted in a genuine integrity that he now understood was the most valuable asset a person could possess. He had spent his life chasing billions, only to discover that the only true treasures in life were the ones she embodied so effortlessly. This was the ultimate plot twist of his own making. The secret test, designed to expose the greed of others, had ended up exposing his own empty heart. It had stripped away the noise and the nonsense and had left him with one simple, heart-aching truth. Kelly Reagan was the woman he had been searching for his entire life, without even knowing he was looking. His quest for loyalty had led him, unexpectedly, to a genuine love story. He replayed the last few weeks in his mind, her unwavering support, her fierce defense of his honor, her brilliant mind, her simple, unpretentious joy. Each memory was a piece of a puzzle that, when assembled, created a portrait of the only person who had ever seen him for who he was, not what he had. She hadn't fallen for the billionaire, she had given her all to the man she believed was underneath. And in turn, he had fallen completely for her. The feelings were so intense, so raw, that they scared him. He had no idea if she felt the same way. To her, was he still just her boss, a project for her to fix? The power dynamic between them, even in his ruined state, was complicated. Confessing his love felt like the biggest risk he had ever taken, far greater than faking his own bankruptcy. This wasn't a game anymore. This was his heart on the line, for real. He knew he couldn't go on with the charade for much longer. It felt dishonest, a betrayal of the incredible trust she had placed in him. But how could he tell her the truth? How could he reveal that their entire journey of overcoming adversity together was built on a foundation of his own design? He was trapped between the love story he desperately wanted and the lie he had created, and he had no idea how to find his way out. Just as Mark was wrestling with his heart and his conscience, his phone buzzed. It was a new, untraceable phone. He used only for one purpose: to communicate with his legal team. The message was brief and to the point: Phase 1 complete. All assets secured. Awaiting your signal to proceed with Phase 2, the restoration. It was the signal he had been waiting for, the pre-planned end of the test. His life as a billionaire was waiting for him to simply say the word. A few weeks ago, this message would have been a moment of triumph. It would have meant his plan had worked, that he could now ascend back to his throne, vindicated in his cynicism. But now, as he looked at the message, he felt nothing but a cold dread. Ending the test meant ending this life he had built with Kelly. It meant the end of their shared meals, their quiet evenings, their genuine connection. It felt less like a victory and more like a death sentence for the only real happiness he'd ever known. He hesitated. For the first time in his life, the decisive Mark Gomez was paralyzed by indecision. If he gave the signal, he would get his empire back, but he would risk losing Kelly forever. How could she ever trust him again after learning that her sacrifice, her loyalty, her kindness, were all responses to a manipulated reality? He could see the look of betrayal in her eyes already, and the thought was unbearable. The lie had become a gilded cage, and he was reluctant to leave it. The real life he had built with Kelly, in a modest apartment with borrowed money, felt infinitely more valuable than the billions of dollars waiting for him in offshore accounts. This simple existence had been his redemption, showing him what true love and loyalty looked like. To trade that for his old life felt like a terrible bargain. He had started this journey to weed out the fake people in his life, but what if in the end, the fakest person of all was him? He was faced with an impossible choice. He could end the secret test and reclaim his power, potentially destroying the most precious relationship he had ever had. Or he could, what? Continue the lie indefinitely? Disappear and start a new life with her, leaving his empire behind for good? The possibilities swirled in his mind, each one more complicated than the last. The brilliant strategist was trapped in a maze of his own design, and his heart was the prize. The phone in his hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. His legal team was waiting, his old world was waiting. But as he looked out the window of the small apartment, watching Kelly return from the grocery store with a smile on her face, he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't go back to the man he was before. The test had changed him irrevocably. But what he would do next, even he didn't know. After a night of agonizing indecision, Mark Gomez made his choice. He replied to his lawyers with a single word: proceed. But his plan had changed. This was no longer just about exposing the greedy. It was about honoring the one person who had proven herself worthy. He sent a series of messages, calling for an emergency board meeting at his old headquarters. He summoned everyone who had abandoned him: Isabella, his former best friends, his treacherous business partners. The invitation was cryptic, promising a major announcement regarding the liquidation of Gomez's assets. They all came like vultures to a carcass, eager to pick over the bones. They gathered in the familiar, opulent boardroom, whispering amongst themselves, a cocktail of greed and pity in the air. The doors swung open, and in walked Mark Gomez, but he wasn't the broken, humbled man they remembered. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, radiating the old, unmistakable aura of power and authority. And at his side, looking poised and confident, was Kelly Reagan. The room fell into a stunned, confused silence. "Welcome," Mark began, his voice calm and cold as ice. "Thank you all for coming. I'm sure you're all eager to hear about my bankruptcy." He let the word hang in the air for a moment, before a slow, chilling smile spread across his face. "The thing is," he continued, "there's no bankruptcy. There never was. What you all participated in, with such enthusiasm I might add, was simply a secret test, a loyalty test. And every single one of you failed, spectacularly." The reveal hit the room like a physical blow. Gasps of shock and horror rippled through the crowd. Isabella's face went white, while his former friends looked like they had seen a ghost. Mark didn't give them a moment to recover. He laid out their betrayals one by one, with cold, hard evidence-recorded calls, saved text messages, public statements. He systematically exposed their greed, their cowardice, their complete lack of honor. It wasn't angry, it was a surgical, brutal execution of their characters, leaving them utterly humiliated. This test, Mark announced, his voice rising with power, was designed to clear out the rot from my life and my company. And it worked. He then turned and gently took Kelly's hand, his expression softening as he looked at her. It also revealed the one person whose loyalty, integrity, and brilliance are beyond measure. He turned back to the shell-shocked room. "So I have two final announcements to make. The first," he declared, "is that Kelly Reagan has accepted the position of Chief Operating Officer of Gomez Industries." A wave of disbelief washed over the room. His assistant? Coup? He held up a hand to silence the murmurs. "And my second announcement," he said, looking lovingly at Kelly, "is to introduce you to my future wife." The final plot twist landed, leaving his former world in ruins while he stood ready to build a new one, founded on true love and unwavering loyalty. And so Mark Gomez's brutal secret test comes to an end. What began as a cynical search for betrayal, a way to prove that everyone had a price, turned into something else entirely. It became an unexpected, heartaching journey of redemption, proving that the best parts of humanity can't be found on a balance sheet. It's a powerful reminder, isn't it? In a world obsessed with status and wealth, the things that truly define US loyalty, kindness, and integrity can't be bought or sold. They have to be earned, and they are revealed not in moments of triumph, but in moments of trial. We watched a powerful billionaire who had to lose everything to finally find himself, and a humble assistant whose quiet strength turned out to be the most powerful force of all. Their story shows that sometimes you have to burn your entire world down to build a better one from the ashes. A world founded not on money, but on a foundation of true love and unwavering trust. Mark went looking for loyalty, and in the ultimate plot twist, found the love story of a lifetime. But now, we really want to hear from you. What part of this emotional journey impacted you the most? Was it the shocking moment Kelly offered him her entire life savings? Or perhaps the scene where she so bravely defended his honor when he was being humiliated? Share your favorite moment in the comments below. We'd love to read it. And what did you think of that ending? Was it the satisfying conclusion you were hoping for? Or were you expecting a different outcome for Mark and Kelly? Let us know if you liked the desfecho or if you had another idea in mind. Your opinion truly matters to us. If this story of overcoming adversity and finding true love resonated with you, please show your support by hitting that like button. It helps our channel reach more people who need to hear stories like this. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications. We have a huge library of older videos with incredible stories for you to watch, and you definitely don't want to miss the powerful new ones we have coming up. Thank you for spending this time with us. Until next time.